Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne, and today is Friday, January the 8th, 2021. We did a show yesterday, and we're going to follow it up with another one today. The news that's spilling out is just moving so fast and furious that it's hard to not to say something about what's going on. Well, it seems like this is the end of America as we know it, and it looks like Season 1 is ending within the next 10 days, and Season 2 will probably start in 2 weeks. Season 1 ends with Trump being permanently disbarred from Twitter, from the Twitter account. He has lost his Twitter account. He has been using Twitter and social media for the last 4 years, to foment lies, to rile people up, and to spread misinformation on a level that's never before been seen in this country. Now, Fox News, and I normally don't watch Fox News, I'll be perfectly honest. I've tried to watch it a couple of times to sort of catch up with what's going on there. I cannot watch them for more than a half a minute at a time. Well, I was sort of in and out today, and my wife sneaks in and she watches it in between shows sometimes, and she'll turn it on to catch what the drift is over there. She has a lot more tolerance than I do, I'll tell you that. Well, right now, so anyway, I'm going through, and she has me stop for a few minutes, and I catch about 2 minutes of Hannity. I want to remind you, Hannity, back at the beginning of the pandemic, was caught on tape with one of his co-hosts walking across 6th Avenue, that's 2 blocks down from the MSNBC building, right in the middle of Manhattan. Walking across 6th Avenue, caught on tape, and the audio was very clear. I saw this. Talking about how, well, we're going to thin out the herd. They were worried about people that were dying in the nursing homes that particular week because there was a huge number of people dying in nursing homes. It was making major news because Rachael was covering it pretty extensively on MSNBC. Well, they were talking about how it would be good to thin the herd out. Meanwhile, they're on television lying about the effects of the virus, and they themselves know that they need to separate themselves from other people and quarantine and all these things that are telling everybody the complete opposite of. So this is just the beginning for Fox News. So here's Hannity. And what happened is once Twitter banned Donald Trump, these guys are going nuts about the loss of personal freedom. Now let me remind you, on his account, he's encouraged his supporters to literally march on the Capitol. Okay? This is what's known as sedition. It's like screaming a fire in a movie theater. You can't do it. It's not a matter of personal freedom. You can't do it. You can't endanger other people's lives. Now, once you start doing things like that, it gets a little bit serious. Well, Fox News is just going ballistic that the Democrats are coming in, and like they always do, they're going to wipe away all of our freedom. Hannity goes so far to give this ridiculous story about how, I think they played something where he saw the night before where, was it Tucker Carlson? No, Tucker Carlson, one of his own people. Anderson Cooper. He's talking about Anderson Cooper the night before was talking about how he was having dinner at Olive Garden, and then they left Olive Garden and they went to the Marriott Hotel. Well, for starters, Olive Garden isn't exactly a 4-star Italian restaurant. Let's get really clear about that. It's maybe a little bit better than Mama Leone's, which is a few blocks west, where they bring tour buses up. And God knows what they serve in there anymore, canned sauces and everything else. So Olive Garden isn't a whole lot better. So Hannity is speculating that he is going to lose his spaghetti privileges at these big restaurants in New York, like Olive Garden. He's coming up with this stuff out of nowhere. He's pulling stuff out of his hat. Okay, I'll be polite. He's pulling stuff out of his hat. And they've got a picture of Hillary on the screen while this is going on. So he's talking about the Democrats taking away all of our freedoms. He's got a picture of Hillary up there. And I'm sure before he's over, he's going to start talking about Hunter Biden. They keep regurgitating the same old theories that have been proven wrong. back on Saturday TV on Planet Earth, Rachael Maddow the night before is concerned that yesterday was a win for Trump. After the rally where Trump spoke, as the crowd was marching towards the Capitol, Trump went back to the White House and he's watching it on TV. And he's liking what he sees. He liked watching it on TV. He was thrilled. It was a win for him. And the whole idea is, by these people destroying the democratic norms that we've had in this country for a couple hundred years. Now, getting into the whole concept of democracy and how fragile our democracy and how efficient our democracy is even is a whole topic for another day. And we will get into this because prior to Trump, we could have done a show about the democracy being seriously in danger, which it is and has been for a long time. Accepting the fact that the old normal is better than the new insanity, looking at what passed as our democracy just a little while ago is a little bit hopeful compared to where these people are going today. These people are literally fascist. They're fascist. They're spreading lies, inciting violence, and attempting to maintain power no matter what. The other day when Pence at the White House, at the Congress, said that he would vote for, that he had to vote for the win by Joe Biden. It wasn't a matter of, oh, do you want to do this, do you want to do that? No, it's his job to do that. This is what you do. Here's the piece of paper, you read the paper, that's it, get out of here. Because he said he was going to do that, one of Trump's other lawyers publicly said yesterday on camera that Pence ought to be the first one in front of a firing squad. First one in front of a firing squad. Lindsey Graham, who was the last Republican to speak in the Senate the other day, who quickly went over all these false claims about voter fraud and knocked them out one after another, pointing out the 60 cases that were in court. He is verbally, I mean really badly verbally attacked as he's getting off the planes at the airport where he is. It's nuts. These Trump-ed people are absolutely crazy. The guy with the guy with the horns on has been identified, and the guy with his feet up that was sitting at Pelosi's desk, pointing his finger down to like a, you know what that means, or I don't know whether you're allowed to say it on YouTube or not. He's actually been arrested. Lisa Murkowski is talking about leaving the Republican Party. 2 days ago, Trump signed the bill freeing up all this land to the oil developers in Alaska, which she has wanted for ages. Before the riots, she was still on the full page with Donald. Well, since then, she's literally saying, well, enough is enough. And she's talking about leaving the Republican Party. What's happening is there's a split coming here really big time. And it's obviously the Republican Party is going to crack right in half. The Democratic Party isn't quite there yet, and the Democratic Party has already got your what they call the far left, which is the AOC crowd and Bernie Sanders and stuff like that. And it's mostly centrist and right-winger. So even though, and rightist, even though there's a 50-50 Senate, which could be broken with a tie by the party in power, which is the Democrats, I wouldn't hold my breath on that 50-50 vote happening too many times. And I'm not talking about crossovers from the Republican, I'm talking about crossovers from the Democrats. And a bunch of these southern Dixiecrat Democrats, and there's still a few left in there, are going to be going in the opposite direction. So this 50, it looks good, and it's better than it used to be, way sure. And it's really good that McConnell is not the in charge of the majority in the Senate. Having said that, it's just not a slam dunk. So keep your ears open. Things could change any minute right now. As back to the riot from the other day, which I've got a few headlines in back of me pointing out. The whole conspiracy thing coming through that was all these Antifa people that were in the middle of this whole riot that happened. Now, this has been the ongoing rap that's been coming out of the far right every time there's these disturbances. And anytime you get right-wing people doing anything destructive, oh, it's the Antifa people that are infiltrating us. Well, they had this going all over their social networks all the other day, how all these Antifa people were all over the crowd, and they had come in and everything. Well, the FBI has identified the people. They weren't Antifa at all. In fact, they were known right-wing fanatics, and the people of that the right-wing Trumpettes were pointing out were Antifa were the complete opposite. They were right-wing fanatics who were in the midst of this whole thing. So, with all these things going on, it's hard to figure out what the next step is. But I would pay attention to Rachael Maddow at night. Rachael Maddow at night is really, as most of the people on MSNBC, which is sort of at this point in time planet Earth, are concerned about the lack of accountability by these people. If we know they arrested 50 people, we know they also have the guy with his feet up on the desk, he's been arrested. There ought to be a lot more arrests. There are people on television right now, reporters who know who a lot of these people are, and they can be identified. And if there isn't a significant gathering up and charging of these people, along with a significant action against the people who have enabled them, because the enablers, you've got Trump, and you got the lower echelon here, the mob. Well, in between, you've got these corporations that have been supporting this guy for the last 4 years. Why? Because they're making an extra 2 or 3% profit, maybe, on their investments. And that's what this whole thing is about. Like I said the other day, the capitalist will sell you the rope to hang himself with, and that's what these people have been doing. Wall Street, for the last 4 years, has literally been selling us the rope to hang them with. And now they don't like it so much. They don't like it when they see mobs in the street. Anarchy is not the MO for Wall Street. You don't do good business when you've got people rioting in the streets. It's not really good for the bottom line in the long run, unless you're in the business of selling riot gear. And there aren't that many selling riot gear. So there's a serious situation right now. It's being identified by some commentators, the coastal liberal elites, I'm sure. And I'm looking at what's the playbook for myself? What's the playbook for us? Who are us? Who are we? Now, when I first started doing the show, I did a little chart about how we're heading into a tipping point right now. And you know what? Let me come over here. I get where's the pen go? I don't have the pen here. Oh, here it is. I talked about how things are spiraling down to a tipping point. Tipping point. It's not easy writing on this board here. So time right now, so this is say 2020, 21, you know, in terms of large time periods, 1 or 2 years is a little fuzzy when it comes to, you know, Nostradamus type or astrological prediction. But we're reaching this point here, and when we reach it, we're going to come back out of it. So what this was here, this here coming down, is the age of materialism that we're in. And this one coming up is the age of spiritualism, which we're going to enter into. Now, right here in the middle is this tipping point. And the tipping point, anything can happen. And as the old is dying, it's not going down easy or easily. It's kicking and screaming. Just like Bill Maher said about Donald Trump, that he's going to go out kicking and screaming. Well, the whole system is going out kicking and screaming. We need to rebuild the economic system. We need to rebuild the political system. And we can do that with an influx of a spiritual system. And the three aspects that I used to talk about that were driving this were the mindfulness movement, the cooperative movement, and the hashtag Me Too, or the feminist movement. in front of me right here on the side also, let's go down here, just look at these two. These are two magazines, Yes Magazine and, well, this one with Donald's, let's put that up there. It's Donald's picture with the, whoops, nope, I'm not getting it. Oh, okay, hold it. Over here, there he is. There's Donald poking his finger in his eye over here. Well, this is the cover of ADBUSTERS. I got 3 cameras in the room here. We're trying to make sense of them. And so I'm doing this. This is the first time I'm sort of working with this kind of thing. So these are the 2 cuts. Now, ADBUSTERS is a radical political economy magazine started by a group of advertising people in Canada about 20 odd years ago. These were the people who were responsible for the Occupy movement. They branded the movement, they called for the movement, they were responsible for the Occupy movement. They generally run with a very nihilistic view of how things are going, with a very nihilistic view of capitalism and its effects on the society. They rarely have something nice to say. Every so often they do, and I've noted a couple of times they do. And they ended the magazine, which I thought was really remarkably quite nice. They ended the magazine over here, and the quote was, "My heart spikes with mad joy at the sight of a patch of wildflowers." Well, this was after us looking at things like, things like Donald Trump over here, and things like, let me get it here. Somehow things like images like this. This magazine is just loaded with black and white images, color images. There's little storylines in between. ADBUSTERS. I read that regularly, and there's a couple of here that I've almost did a whole show about one of them. The Yes Magazine is called the Journal of Positive Futures, and that's sort of the opposite of ADBUSTERS. These people are always positive. These people are the cutting edge of a positive view of things that are possible within society. And which one is more relevant? It's hard to say, but it's good to be aware of both of them. This is what we're coming out of. This is the one we're coming out of, and this is the way we're going into. This is the end of capitalism, you know it, and the beginning of something new. The headlines here: what the rest of the world knows, the best ideas, how Norway built an economy that puts people first. I mean, these are the kind of things that we want to get into. Is what do we need to rebuild the society and to ensure that we have a safe, secure, and healthy future. All right, that's going to be the end of my rant for the day about politics. I'm going to just jump somewhere else real briefly for a moment and make a recommendation. I don't read a lot of novels in general. I mean, I read On the Waterfront, and I read Moby Dick when I was about 10 years old, and I read other books along the way. But I don't generally read a lot of novels. I mostly read the newspaper. I get 2 newspapers a day in the house. These are 2 of about a dozen magazines I get in the house every week, or every month rather. So I'm mostly reading didactic and journalistic types of things. I've also been taken with Virginia Woolf's writing over the years. And she wrote a book a few years ago, many years ago. She wrote a book a century ago, A Room of Your Own. And I almost have the whole book underlined. And if you see the movie, if you watch the movie The Hours, where Nicole Kidman plays Virginia Woolf, Nicole Kidman is unrecognizably not looking like Nicole Kidman. She looks more like Virginia Woolf than Virginia Woolf does. But in it, she has a room of her own where she does her writing, and it's an interesting part of the rap about Virginia Woolf. Well, The Hours is about the book Mrs. Dalloway. So I said, well, you know, I don't generally read many of these novels. So I got this novel, and I started reading it, and I find that her writing is almost magical. It's poetic to the point where it struck me. I wrote this here the other day. I said, Reading Virginia Woolf, her mellifluous flow of words thrill me. Sensually, it's essentially they run through my whole being. I finished reading some of her paragraphs, and it's like I can feel them sort of running through me. It's like going to a symphony or an opera where you're listening to this music and it's sort of running through your whole body and sort of exciting you to a certain extent. And I find reading Virginia Woolf, especially this particular book here, internally operatic in my experience. Absolutely internally operatic. I don't know what I was going to read some parts of it, but that's not here for tonight. But what I did, that's the little cheapo version of the book. I had started reading Proust. I never read Proust. And I felt like, well, I'm supposed to be a smart guy and I'm supposed to be familiar with writers, and Proust's name is always coming up. So let me get Proust. So I got Swann's Way by Proust. I may bring it down one day and we'll compare the two. And I started reading it, and it was like, took 2 pages for him to, turn back the covers and get to bed that night, or 2.5 pages for his mother to kiss him goodnight, which he couldn't stop waiting for. And he was very flowery and very good, and I was really enjoying the literature. And then I picked up Virginia Woolf, and my God, she literally makes Proust sound pedestrian. She really does. I would highly recommend, if anybody wants to get some thrilling literary experience, read Virginia Woolf. That's my recommendation for the day. Interestingly, there were 2 recent articles about it, and Jennifer Offill wrote A Lifetime of Lessons in Mrs. Dalloway, which was in the New Yorker at the end of December. And she first read the book because she wanted to, the woman was worried about herself going mad. So she wanted to read Mrs. Dalloway because Virginia Woolf commits suicide and goes a little bit mad. So she read it for that reason. Well, she then went back 20 years later, and she had when she read it, she sort of discounted the other aspects, the other characters in the book, and didn't pay them much attention. And as she went back and reread it, she realized that there was more going on with the other characters than she had previously recognized. And the second time around reading it, it was what was happening with the other characters, not the person committing suicide, that was sort of a more interesting part of the book. And the third time she read it, she had another third awakening with it. So that was one aspect of this that came up. The other was, there was an essay, and this was in the book review of the New York Times back on December 27th, 2 days before the other article. And it was how Virginia Woolf revolutionized the novel. And Clarissa Dalloway, an outwardly rather ordinary person, contains just about everything one needs to know about human life, in more or less the way nearly every cell contains the entirety of an organism's DNA. There's a little bit more that's quite interesting in here, but I just got a copy of this, of the new printing of the Penguin Classic, with a introduction by Michael Cunningham, whose writing about the book is almost as poetic as the book itself. So if you're looking for a read and you haven't read it, a lot of people who I've talked to read it, remember reading it back in college. I guess some people had it on their reading list. So I tried to end with something a little bit lighter than the politics of the day. And stay informed, read the paper, and don't give up, and look for a positive future. Peace, patience, persistence, and we'll see you as soon as we can.